Welcome back for the review part 1 of Hellfrost. Yes, I do apologise on the other video, on my update, if there was actually some sound distortion. It's because I had to repair my computer lately, because the whole damn thing basically exploded. And, and yeah, I'm using a slightly different sound card, and for whatever reason, the microphone is ridiculously loud. So, believe it or not, just to get it down to this level, I've had to lower the output by about 30 decibels. So, yeah, people have really good fun with that when I talk to them over Ventrilo and all sorts. Anyway, Hellfrost, yes. This, as I mentioned in my other video, is a game by none other than Paul Wade Williams. Again, as I mentioned in the other video, this is only the player's guide. The bestiary, which details all the beasts and how to make legendary items, and the gazetteer, that's gazetteer, not gadgeteer, will actually be around for adventurers and GMs, and the GM's needs and whatnot. And both the bestiary and gazetteer will be out in November, because sadly the books have been delayed, which is a real shame. But never mind, because just reading the player's handbook alone, I mean, it's not the thickest of books, but just reading the player's handbook alone, it's just quality. I mean, I really, this is the player's handbook, this is fantastic. It's not overblown, it gives you exactly what you need to know really know what the hell is up in the world. It gives you what you need to know about the races, characters, how things work. It's honestly, it's everything the player needs in a sort of a very clear, very concise format. And the way he's done it, I mean, some people might think, well, yeah, why am I going to get 3 books when before he's only released it 1? But the amount of detail that's gone into this, I'm not surprised he's releasing it in 3 different books. He's not ripping people off. Regardless, anyway, the book itself, it simply starts with the land, what's happened in the last 500 years and whatnot, making characters, gear, hedge magic, magic in general, religion, spells, glory, life in Razalon, which is the world, organizations, generic setting rules, everything you need, so. But, what sets Hellfrost apart? Well, as I mentioned in my, my What's Happening video, Hellfrost is very much... I hate using this word because it just doesn't fit, but it's a generic fantasy setting. I don't like that. It's very much a more traditional fantasy setting than, say, Sundered Skies and some of the other lot, or Evernight or something like that. So, there's some beautiful artwork in the book as well. I was very, very, very impressed with some of this stuff. Nice little tavern scene here, so dwarves, elves, humans, whatever you like, it's all there. So when I say traditional, you got all the races, you got orcs, you got elves, you got dwarves, you got all this stuff. But it's got a very, very Norse flair to it. I mean, to be honest, most of the Norse gods are in there. Most of the pagan gods are in there. And basically, the world as it stands at the moment, 500 years ago, an enemy, not quite sure exactly what enemy, basically a horde of icy beings, let's just put it that way, rode from the north, and they came south towards the Hearthlands and laid waste to everything in a war known as the Blizzard Wars. Essentially, most of Razalon culture was decimated, lore was lost, but eventually the actual, the races rallied and fought back the evil. The evil became known as the Hellfrost. Basically, the Hellfrost is an area in the north which is perpetual winter. And when the hordes were beaten back, a massive wall of ice, miles high, rose out of the land to sort of cut off Hellfrost from the rest of Razalon. And yeah, as I say, it's a place of perpetual winter. Also, the gods of sun and fire, I can't really remember the name, but the gods of sun and fire have vamoosed before the war started. Fire magic has, like I say, an enterprising guy starting off in here says, I'm going to be a fire mage because I'm going to melt my way through those cold-resistant bastards. Yeah, well, unfortunately, fire magic has now been weakened because the god of fire is not there for his priests and his and elementalists to draw power from. So yeah, things are going to the wall a bit, um, and that's basically where you start. You're starting 500 years after the Blizzard Wars. Civilization has pretty much got back on its feet. There's an uneasy peace between all the races. And the races themselves are you got four different types of humans. You got the Saxer and the Finnar. It doesn't take a genius to realise that means Saxons and the Finnish. You've got the so basically Finnar are a sort of nomadic race. The Saxer are quite warlike. You got the It's like Anglica, but not. But basically, think sort of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, very British sort of thing. And you got the Toomey, who basically think Picts, think warriors, but these barbaric warriors who aren't really barbarians, but these warriors living in nature, sort of in woad tattoos and all that sort of stuff. And those are the Toomey. You've got two different types of elves who are basically the same. You've got your Taiga elves. Think of them as wood/ice elves, basically. And you've got your hearth elves. There isn't really a lot of difference between the two. The hearth elves simply live in warmer climates. The Taiga elves are used to colder climates. There's not really a huge amount of difference. It's not the great sun wood elf divide that's in a lot of D&D stuff. In fact, they're on good terms with each other. It's just a few hundred years ago they had an amicable disagreement, and the faction split. And it wasn't violent, You've also got your classic dwarves, the dwarves, who, well, they are dwarves, but they're actually ice dwarves, and they basically exist in climates below sub-zero. So they're quite interesting because in actual fact, instead of fire forges, they have what's known as cold fire forges because they tend to live in ice caverns. A cold fire forge is just like a fire forge, except instead of intense heat, it radiates intense cold, but has the magical properties of still being able to melt metal. Who knew? But what can you say? The dwarves, basically, to a T. Except they got paler hair and sort of light whitish blue skin sort of thing. They tend to dye their hair when they go out, into the world, simply so that they're not, they don't draw too much attention to themselves, which I thought was a neat little touch. You've also got the Engros, or the Engros is the plural, Engro is singular. And the Engros are actually, basically think of them as a cross between hobbits and gnomes. They're a nomadic race that basically they travel through the world in these brilliant. I just have this wonderful picture. In basic caravans of moving houses, essentially. Chimneys puffing smoke while they're moving along. You got sort of the women sort of sitting there on the porch knitting while they're being pulled along by beasts of burden. Probably pygmy war mammoths. I mean, they actually exist. And they're a race that's not really very much like that. They tend to be regarded as tinkerers and meddlers and pickpockets, and it's not entirely unfounded. But they've got a really nice aesthetic feel to them. And you've also, last but not least, basically a new race has evolved since the Hellfrost came about, and I'll be damned if I can remember what they're actually called. Frostborn. That wasn't too hard, was it? Frostborn, basically, they're a bit strange because they're an amalgamation of every other race, but they don't share any racial advantages or hindrances or heritages. But basically, a Frostborn can be born to any race, but they always radiate cold. They're all of them to a man. They've got very deep ice blue skin and white hair. They're basically a race unto themselves, despite which race birthed them. So they'll have the look of the parents, but that's about it. And they're pretty much shunned by the majority of people. So essentially, you're in a world where Ragnarok is imminent. Not that it's actually called that, but they do call this perpetual winter Fimbulvinter, which is the winter that precedes Ragnarok. And essentially, hell's freezing over every year. The cold's encroaching more and more and more into the hearthlands. The centre of civilization. The winters are getting longer. The summers are getting shorter. It's quite a bleak setting. But as we all know, bleak settings are the best when it comes to adventuring. That's where your real epic tales come about. So, absolutely, so that's basically the general overview. And I'll go into the core mechanics a bit, and I'm not going to take too long over this because really, you need to pick up this book and you need to read it for yourselves. Seriously. Anyway, I'll be right back. Catch you in a moment.